fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. Heard on KC 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, Mr. Dave Martino.
Yes, I am here.
See, it's a catching, I'm catching you every time.
You are.
Yeah,
you are.
See, you're not paying attention. You're falling asleep. Heads in your whiskey.
Settle that's down. Right. Yeah.
Settle down. Okay, another week, and then it's holiday time for me.
That's
finally.
Right.
The last to go.
Who said you could go on vacation?
I did. Don't forget, I'm the boss.
That's right. That's right.
To an extent. So let's move on. So today we are talking mystery. We have a mystery writer. Book is called The Empty Kayak, and it's a Queen City crimes mystery, and it looks like it's novel 3. The author, Jode Millman, thank you for being here.
Nice to be with you guys.
How did you get mixed up in this world of writing, telling the big lie?
Well, I it's funny that you should use that term of phrase, because by trade I'm an attorney. So
there we go.
And it's I kind of stumbled into publishing down a different path than most people. And I started out writing nonfiction because I was writing, my father wrote a book called Seats in New York, and it's a guide to all the Broadway theaters, and he had seating charts and where to get tickets and how to get free tickets, all that good stuff. And then he unexpectedly passed away when the book became a bestseller for its publisher, which was Applause Theater and Cinema Books, which is part of Hal Leonard Publishing. So they came to me and they said, look, first of all, would you represent your father on the book tour? I said, sure. And then when the book tour was a success and we sold a lot of copies, they said, well, would you like to do the next couple of editions? So I did that for about 10 years. I wrote several editions of this Broadway series. But then in the back of my mind, I knew that I always wanted to write fiction. So when the internet kind of blew up and took away really the market for a book like Seats, I decided to really sit down and seriously, put my story that had been percolating in my head for a while down on paper. And that was about 2010. So that's when I started writing my fiction.
But when you're taking over for the series you were doing, where did that kind of confidence come from? Because for me, I could just think of myself 10, 20 years ago and someone saying, in the family writing and then dying and then saying, well, why don't you do it? It's like, what? I mean, cause that's, that's not just something you do casually. That's something, and I would imagine you felt a little bit of pressure.
Actually, it came about at a very convenient time in my life because my husband was transferred for a position out to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we'd been living in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is where we lived and where we moved back to. And at that point, I had to close my office, move my family out to Michigan, and I really didn't have anything on my plate. So it came about at the perfect time in my life for a career change. So, and it wasn't really daunting for me because I'd been involved with my father as he'd gone through the process and also with the contacts that he'd had creating the book. So it wasn't really something that I stepped into, cold turkey. It was something that, was kind of organic. That's probably the best way to describe it. It was organic.
I like cold turkey.
After the day after Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, I think cold turkey's great. But listen, when we get into mystery, okay, so you're tied up in law, a lawyer, and you kind of jump into the mystery. So
yeah,
where does that come from you? Do you have like this real do you love mysteries and all that and you kind of jump into it? Or does it come from cases you've worked on or people you've run across in your work life?
Well, I always loved mysteries. I mean, probably, my first addiction was Nancy Drew. And so, after reading all those books, it was always something that I really loved. And I found that over the years, I mean, I was a huge fan of Elmore Leonard and P.D. James. I mean, I really read a lot of mysteries. And so that really kind of fed the beast, because when I knew that I wanted to write fiction, I never thought about writing anything else, to be honest with you, because being an attorney, I wanted to write about something that I knew, and I wanted to write a legal thriller. And the stories that I write are all inspired by true crimes which have happened in the Hudson Valley, and crimes with which I've had some kind of connection, some direct and some tenuous. So to me, those stories, again, came to me very naturally. So when I knew that it was time to write, I knew it was going to be a legal thriller, and I knew it was going to be one of these stories.
So they were just crimes you committed yourself.
Well, the crime was on paper more than anything else.
So what comes first for you then? Like when you sit down to do this, was it the setting, the character, or is it the plot? Like how do you start a mystery story?
Well, the setting is always going to be the Hudson Valley, where I live. And as I go through my stories, I introduce my readers to different aspects of the Hudson Valley, not the same ones, that they also get to know this beautiful place where I live. So that's always a given. Kind of like Anne Cleve, always writes about the same place, and Louise Penny, they always write about the same place. So that's off the table. What draws me, the first thing is, I would have to say it's the plot, because I start with that inspiration of the crime. And once I know what crime I'm going to write about, that's when I say, okay, I'm going to create a cast of characters, and how am I going to insert them so that their lives are affected in some way by this particular crime? So maybe, sometimes they're victims, sometimes they're related to victims, or they're in this circle, and this, I call it the ripple effect, like when you drop a little pebble into the water and you see it ripple out. That pebble is the crime, and everything else in my story are the ripples that come out in the concentric circles.
It's funny, when Anne Cleves told me that she writes her settings as a character, and
Yes.
because there's such a strong character to her settings, and she liked small settings, like she didn't write in a big city, for instance, because it's just a different type of people and the way they interact with each other and stuff. Or do you do the same? Is your Hudson Valley setting like a character?
Well, it's funny that you should mention Anne, because she really inspired me. I took a class with her, and it was all about setting becoming a character. And her perspective was that setting is just not a place. It dictates how people speak, what they eat, the type of clothes they wear, their socioeconomic classes, their names. I mean, so to me, setting is a huge character. And I don't want to say I try to mimic what Anne does, but when I'm writing, the things that she has said to me really follow through and hopefully come on my page.
Yeah, she's quite a writer.
Incredible.
When you put this together, your characters, where do they come from? Are they I always ask that, and it's always kind of different from different people, because some are really, really, I don't want to say artsy, so they hear their characters, they see them in their head, and they describe them as family and kids and things like that. And then others are more technical, and they describe them more in technical terms, and they don't have any feelings toward them. Where do you fall in?
Well, I knew that when I was going to write the story, I wanted to write about a female lawyer. I thought, to me, that was very important, since that was something that I knew. So she was really, especially in the first book, which is The Midnight Call, my character, my protagonist, Jessie Martin, is she's the hub of around which everybody operates. So I didn't know her as a character. I knew who she was going to be. I knew the trouble she was going to get into and the misadventures she was going to have. I also knew, since I was inspired by this true crime, I already knew who the bad guy was. And in fact, if you read The Midnight Call, the first line is my villain saying, "I think I've killed someone." And I knew he was going to be a teacher because he was inspired by this teacher that I knew. So I started out with that dynamic, the tension between these two characters. This gal, Jessie Martin, is she's a young attorney. She's a corporate attorney. She doesn't know beans about criminal law. And then her mentor, her father's best friend, calls and says, "Hey, I think I just killed someone. I need your help." And of course he calls in the middle of the night after he murders somebody, or we believe that he murders someone. So I knew that from the beginning that those were the two characters who were going to drive the story. Then I needed other characters to tell the story. And when I write my books, I like to write from, give the readers a 360-degree view of a crime. So for example, Jessie is an attorney, and she's also somewhat a bit of a victim in this. So I knew I was telling it from her perspective. I never tell it from the villain's perspective. I never want to go into his mind. But I needed a district attorney who would represent, the administration, and he was going to, be someone who believed in Jessie, but also had some questions about her, and who also had a romantic past with her. And then my third character that I created was going to be somebody who I needed not a villain, but another attorney to play off Jessie. And that was going to be the criminal defense attorney. So taking those three characters, each character knows something about the story and about the plot that none of the other characters know. Only the reader will know the true story and the whole story behind the crime. So that's how I write, giving these three perspectives that give you hopefully a 360-degree view of my crimes and my stories. Did that answer your question?
No.
I didn't think it did. As where they came from, I can't really tell you where they came from. My husband says you have to be a little nuts to be a crime fiction writer, so I think they must come from that. Really?
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, speaking of that, when you're creating dialogue, I'm wondering, can you hear these characters? Can you hear Jessie in your head? Do you have an inner monologue? I know like 20 to up to 50% of people actually don't have, they can't hear the thoughts in their heads. And so, in creating the dialogue, do you hear the character and transcribe it, or is there some other way?
No, I do hear the characters, and I do see the characters, and the characters do, and I'm sure you've heard this a gazillion times, they take on a life of their own. So, to some degree, I become the vessel within which they are spewing their story. I mean, really. It's coming from my imagination, but I do believe that they take on a life of their own. And in fact, I recall specific scenes where in my mind and in my outline, I am definitely a plotter. Being an attorney, I have to, plot everything out, and I do these really elaborate outlines that can be 30, 40, 50 pages, which hopefully kind of mimic my chapters as I'm going through the book. And as I outline, I find sometimes I have to go off track because the characters are telling me they want to do something else.
Well, I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if they surprised you, and how do you get back on track?
That's a good question. I can rope them in. Sometimes I find myself like them putting me in the corner, and that's really the big challenge when they do things I hadn't anticipated, and then it becomes a puzzle for me as the writer to figure out how I can wangle them back to the story.
Well, are you allowed to drive? Hearing these voices?
I didn't say I heard voices. I said I'm the vessel through which they speak.
well,
I am the medium. I'm the medium.
You're the medium. So you go around, you dress up like the characters, and no, I guess. I guess that's so. The bad guys and the evil character, the person that does the killing or the murder or the bad crime or whatever is kind of the mystery's about. How do you get into writing that type of person?
It was really difficult the first time around to create someone who was a villain, but also had some redeeming qualities that people weren't totally shut them off. Do you know what I mean? They need to have some kind of a weakness to them or something that makes them human, not just a bad guy. For me, I think the most recent villains or suspects for me were the most difficult to write because the first book was a why done it. We know from the beginning who the villain is. The second book was more like, what's going on here? I mean, there was like it was like a bunch of cold cases that were they linked together? Were they not linked together? Was it one person? Was it many people? So I really didn't have to I knew who the villain was. And I had to hint at there being other villains, but he also wasn't very difficult to create because I knew the crimes that he had committed, and I just knew him. This most recent one, it was the first time I really wrote a whodunit. So in writing a whodunit, you have to create suspects who possibly could be, the villain. And so to some degree, they're all villains. So I had to write more than one villain, which was really challenging, making the reader wonder, could one or more of these people be villains? And for me, that was really quite a challenge because, as I said, I had to write something, make them good to some degree, not just all bad.
Right. Yeah. And you kind of have to show the reasoning a lot of times. I think for the reader to care, they have to kind of understand who this bad person is or why they think they're doing something good or why they're doing it.
That's the whole thing. Why are they doing it? What is their motivation? And that's, to me, that's a challenge, creating a plausible motivation that would make someone want to kill a person or, do whatever to them. That's really difficult.
Well, kind of after the last 5 years, I think you can almost say anything now. It doesn't have to be that plausible anymore.
Oh, you're right. Yes.
Anything is plausible now, right?
Woo, that's for sure. And the truth is not the truth. Exactly.
No. So you can say, yeah, it is. You saw it on the internet. Well, yeah, it's kind of crazy. So in speaking of that, so you do use internet through this, right? You have involved the internet in this story, as in social media and stuff when we're talking. So you are drawing kind of what is going on in the world somewhat today, like it's fairly updated. And so do you have to do a lot of studying to get accurate on internet or?
I would say with every aspect of every book that I've written, I really do a lot of research. And that's because I feel a responsibility that when I am presenting something to my readers, I want them to know that it's accurate. Because I know when I read historical fiction or I read a book, I don't want to be fed lies. And I also want to learn something. And so that's why I do a lot of, and it's not only research on the internet. For this last book, The Empty Kayak, I'd never been kayaking. So my husband, my son, and I went to a kayaker, and he actually took us out in the Hudson River so that I would know what my characters were going through, and I would know the importance of equipment, and just so I could know what I was writing about. And I feel very strongly about that. Same thing with, the internet. If I need an expert, I don't have any hesitation, calling a forensic pathologist or talking to an OBGYN or talking to firefighters. To me, I'm learning, and I want to be able to accurately portray everything in my books.
Now, are you conscious of the violence that you write on the page? Is it something that you try to, I don't know, maybe pacify some, or try to make it easier to palate than a real slam dunk slasher?
Well, you know what was interesting with the first book that I wrote, The Midnight Call. I was with a company, and I believe that they call themselves a clean press. So when I submitted the book to them, it had much more violence in it. And they came back to me and they said, look, we really like your book, but we need you to cut out the sex and the violence. And I said, okay.
There's only 2 pages left.
That's exactly what I got to do here. So I went through and I found that, the book stands without having any of that on the page. So, I mean, there is violence. It's more hinted at in the first book. In the second book, there is a lot of violence. I had to describe a lot of violence because a woman gets really beaten up pretty hard. And people have said to me that was a very difficult passage to read, and it was a difficult passage for me to write too. And with this last book, there's a drowning takes place, and that was very hard to write too. But they're essential to the story. I mean, those are the hearts of the crime, and if you're going to be a crime writer, you do it.
Right. You don't kill someone's dog, or you don't usually bring in children to it, do you?
No, I'll draw the line. Yeah, there's a line that I will not cross. Yes.
Yeah, because if it's not like a true crime book itself, I think it's pretty hard to bring that into it. And personally, if someone kills a dog, I stop reading.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in it at all. I mean, there's no point.
Yeah. All the guys laugh at me, but no, I can't be.
Everything has got to further the story. I mean, I think that's the most important arch, that everything has got to further the story, whether it's dialogue, whether it's the plot, whether it's the violence, whether it's the setting. Everything has got to move the story forward.
So when you write a story like this and someone picks up the book, someone picks up The Empty Kayak, takes it home and reads it, and at the end of it, besides the entertainment and besides the main storyline or mystery that you've got going on, is there a subtext or a plot or perhaps a meaning that you hope that the reader takes away? And I know sometimes it's planned, but sometimes it's also something that happens organically in a story.
It's interesting that you should ask me that question, because I recently did an interview with Diana Gabaldon of the Outlander series, and she had said that every book can be summarized, that she's written, in one word. And I asked her, she's writing book 10. I said, what is it? And she said, I don't know yet. I'll know when I finish. And I was thinking about that, because as I've written my books, to me, the first book was about betrayal. The second one was about rehabilitation. And I wanted the third book, The Empty Kayak, to be about reconciliation. And it's about people reconciling with their pasts, people reconciling with each other, people reconciling who they are and what they're feeling and how they feel about things. So it really, for me, is all about reconciliation. I hope people pick that up.
Yeah. It's funny. I've got that kind of an answer the last couple of weeks from different people, whether it be science fiction, any type of writer. A lot of people are talking about that kind of reconciliation and that. And I would just wonder if it's just from the last 5 years and everything that we've been going through. I wonder if people it's more hopeful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it is. And I think that especially in the past 3 years, we're looking for hope. We're looking for a new start. We're looking, we want to be, as you say, very optimistic about where we're going on our respective paths. And that's how I wanted my characters to end up at the end of the book.
It's funny because, and I was thinking about this. If you look back in time, you could look back at the old, even the science fictions, like the old Star Trek and all of the things. It was all, it can be threatening and kind of like it's coming to the end of the world, but it's still hopeful. Whereas a lot of the stuff before the pandemic was very, everyone's going to die.
Right.
It's just no hopeful ending, right? It's just all terrible. Maybe it's kind of swinging back a little bit, which.
Yeah, there was a lot of post-apocalyptic novels before the pandemic. I mean, if you look at like Station 11, right. And you see there were a lot of books like that. And now we've lived through that. Who would ever have thought that we would live through Station 11? But, we did. And so now I think people, I don't think they want to read about the pandemic. Louise Penny kind of tested that in the last one of the last books she wrote, The Madness of the Crowd.
Right.
She hints at at moving through the pandemic. To me, I'm not writing about the pandemic.
No.
I'm skipping over that. I'm pretending that never happened.
Yeah, the hour that never was.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, I think there has to be. I think people are tired of that. It's been so negative in general in everything. Like everyone's so pessimistic. Everything's just bad. You know what I mean? And I think it's kind of good in a way to move forward.
Oh, we have to, and I'm hoping that we stay on that track and that we do not slide backwards.
Yeah, well, yeah, because personally, you get tired of all the negativity and the running down of people and all that. It's kind of like, come on, be happy, be positive.
Right.
So listen, at the end of it, when you finish a book like this, or if you're writing a series and you're putting it together, and when you complete it and you get it into the publisher and it's all, coming out and everything, how do you think the process of a book like that changes you?
I never really thought about how it changes me. To me, I view this as a career, and I view this as an ongoing process. So for me, it's a step of learning. If anything I can say, I've learned more about publishing. I probably have learned more about myself. Hopefully, I'm more confident with each book in my ability to tell a story. Because when you first start out, especially for me, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And hopefully, as I've gone through this process, I'm refining those skills. I'm refining, the pacing, the dialogue, the characters. Personally, it's, when I stopped practicing law, that was, you identify yourself by your occupation. And I always identified myself as a lawyer. Now, I think I'm identifying myself more as an author than a lawyer. It used to be lawyer/author. Now it's author/lawyer.
Yeah, I identify myself as a writer/dancer.
Well, what kind of dance do you do?
Don't ask.
Don't
Dance
ask.
with life?
Whatever's going on in this mind, I'm just dancing away.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, why not? I want to be, I can
happy.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
The internet says it's true, so it's true. When you're doing a series, are you keeping kind of, what do they call it? They call it a Bible or some sort of a thing to kind of keep track of all of the characters and kind of their ins and outs and their habits and stuff like that. Do you do that yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, I do. And I started that while I was writing the first book. And now I have a very thick binder. And, what I do is when I create a character, I assign them a birth date based upon, like an astrological sign kind of thing. So when I develop them, I'm able to do research and find out what the characteristics are of that particular sign. And that's all in the Bible. The same thing with anagrams. I'll determine what kind of anagram personality they have. And so that goes in there. Things like their eye color. What they like to eat, their backstory, all the things that readers never know about, but I know about them. That the type of food, the type of clothes they like to wear, their favorite colors, all of that is in my Bible, so that when I'm continuing on with the series, it's all there for me at my fingertips.
Yeah, because the worst thing in the world is to make a mistake like something simple on a character, because people will find that and let you know.
Yeah, the eye color. I'm a big one with eye color. I have to make a chart of everybody's eye color and the kind of cars they drive.
Well, yeah, they're subtle, but they're important. And are you surprised sometimes at what readers will pick out of a story, or what sometimes they'll think something means in a story that they've read of yours?
Yeah, when the first book came out, people said, well, she obviously doesn't know anything about the law.
Well, there you go.
Okay, I guess that certificate that says I'm admitted to the Supreme Court doesn't mean anything,
Yeah.
People do pick up the craziest things. I mean, somebody reviewed the empty kayak, And they said they picked up on like the tiniest little thing, and it was like, it was like a throwaway remark, and all of a sudden they're citing it in a review. It was just crazy. It's human nature, right?
Yeah. Do you actually go out? Do you go out of your way and you follow what people are saying in reviews and Goodreads and all that stuff? Are you sort of really into that, or do you totally avoid that?
The more that I've been writing, the more I avoid it. Because, my philosophy is, and first of all, I love reviews. I really appreciate when somebody reads my book and they want to write a review. But I don't understand why people have to write nasty reviews. My mother taught me to say, if you don't like something, you don't say anything. Right. You know what I mean? Why go out of your way to be mean and nasty? And I don't understand that mentality. And, I don't think anybody, needs, why are you expressing yourself that way? Like you said, we should be happy. Yeah. Write about things that you like. If you don't like my book, then just, throw it away.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I heard that once, that it's usually, it's how their day is going in their life. And that's how it comes out as the review. So you should just sort of kind of go, well, that's just, they're having a bad day or whatever, right. I used to get really focused on it and I'd be really upset. Now I don't notice. I look at the overall and that's good enough.
Right. And what's also more important when I'm at events and people come up to me and they'll say, it's more, those comments mean more to me, I think. When people will say, oh, I like that part of your book, or they have questions to show that they've read the book. That's what's really cool. You know what I mean? When people will say, oh, you said that this happened. Why did that happen? So it shows that people are really engaged in what I'm writing, and that means a lot to me.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's better. Do you like doing the live events then, book signings and book stuff? I guess, are you starting to do them now that COVID's kind of in the rearview mirror somewhat?
Yeah, for the last book I did a lot virtually, which was fun because I got to, partner with people like Allison Galen and Edwin Hill. We would do, everybody would kind of do things together. Now I'm kind of out on my own, but I like being out and talking to people. And part of that I think has to do with the fact that, as an attorney, you're a bit of a public speaker. You're a ham. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, I could stand up in court and talk all day. And I mean, to me, that skill kind of translates over. It's fun. I really like getting out and meeting people. And I'm starting to do some things a week from Friday, some live events, and then I'll be doing them on and off through the fall, which is great.
Yeah, it's kind of good to get back out there and kind of get more normal as you can get.
Right, and seeing people and having people come out because people were afraid to come out too.
Yeah, well, they're always afraid to come out when I'm there. But that's
like a crossbow over your shoulder.
Yeah, that's kind of a different story. They're all like, "Oh my God," Okay, so now, so what are you going to do next? Like, now that this is out and you're promoting and doing all that stuff? Do you have like others in the works right now, or do you just doing one at a time?
I was going to do one book, but now I'm leaning toward a different crime. So I promised myself, I had been involved I had a 3-book deal. So I'm at the end of the contract, and it was for 3 years or for 2.5 years. For a very compressed time, I've been writing and researching. So I promised myself the summer off. So I'm going to let everything kind of percolate. And then I'll decide in the fall really what my direction is going to be. And I have other things in the hopper too, because I don't know if you know this, I teach a class called the Writers Law School. And what I do is I give lectures, and it's a program actually, about copyright, trademark, patents, fair use, every publishing contracts in a short, condensed program instructing writers on how to do these things. So I'm also going to spend a little bit of time updating that, especially with the onslaught of artificial intelligence. I get questions about the legal ramifications of that all the time. So that's something I'll probably work on this summer.
Yeah, it's kind of a free for all on the internet in a way. A lot of people, I don't think, really grasp the whole, protected content of writers and stuff like that. They just use things at will on the internet.
Yes, they do. They do. And there's a lot of infringement, and people can't generally afford to, to protect their rights. But now I think the Copyright Office they've created what's known as a small claims panel, where people for a very reasonable price can bring on actions for infringement. So, I think it's starting to shift to protect writers. And really, that's part of what the writer's strike is about, is this artificial intelligence and how that's really going to impact not only television, but even us. As novelists, who knows what's going to happen with that technology.
So what's your thought on that now with the AI, the Chat GPT or whatever, things like that? Is that sort of something that everyone should be concerned about?
I think it is, because first of all, it's uncontrolled. It's like the Wild West. And I don't think the programs are, I think they should be used in addition to humans, not in place of humans. That's really what I think my bottom line is. They're here to help. It's here to help us, not replace us.
Well, as far as I see, it's not writing things with feeling. It's writing things from what it's been fed.
Right, what it steals from everybody else.
Yeah, it's kind of like a, computerized copyright. It's kind of like infringement, It's just, I don't know. But I sort of think it's weird.
It is weird, but you find that people are using it to write their synopsis and to write their blurbs, and some people are using it to write entire chapters of their book. If that's the way you want to write, that takes all the joy and, all the humanity out of it. And all the human expression. That's what writing is about. You're writing from your heart. You're writing it's a human expression. And if you want to let the computer do it, God bless you, but just don't present it as if you, a human, have written it.
Yeah, I just have no interest in that at all.
Neither.
Nothing. I'm just not even, I don't know. I like going through the newspapers, and if I'm writing about old times, I like going through all the stuff and going through and learning stuff and kind of capture how I feel about things as I'm writing, rather than, I couldn't imagine just saying, okay, computer, write about 1924.
Right.
It's just kind of crazy, but that's me. How long does it take you to do a book then?
Well, I wrote the last book in a year, and that, for me, honestly, was really kind of stressful.
Yeah.
That, to me, that was stressful, and that's why I want to take a little time and think and enjoy the process instead of feeling like the hammer is going to come down on my head.
Is there a particular time, or when you're doing a book, is there something that all of a sudden you're going to go, wow, it's done? Like, when it's done and it's finished?
It's funny. I never, I always second guess myself. So even when I submit my final version, I'm still in my head going, maybe I should have used this word. I micromanage the situation. So in my head, it's never done until I open the box and it's there, There's always a chance I can still change it, But no, I can't. I can't.
Yeah. Do you ever want to go back to an older book and do some changes on it? Is that
all the time? That's why, I don't want to, I try to make a habit of not reading anything that I've written.
Oh, yeah.
How about you? Do you do that?
No, I did it the first years, and now I don't. Once I've done it and we've been through editing and line editing and it's all finished, that's it. It's over. Nothing to do with me anymore. I didn't do that.
Yeah, that's when, when the line edits go in, that's when the knot kind of releases in my stomach.
Yeah, it's all kind of done and over, and it's fine. And I've kind of moved on then. I don't care so much anymore. Yeah. But there's a few times I know with my very first book, I know that it still sells really well, and sometimes people talk about it and they'll say something, or they want to read this, or and I always cringe because I'm thinking that was the very first thing I wrote. It's terrible, right?
Right.
in my mind, I think, oh
Right.
my God, it's awful. But it gets pretty decent marks. But I just think, oh, I don't promote any of the old stuff. So kind of a combo, you know. What makes a good book for you? Like, you know, what it keeps Jody reading?
Characters, really. Characters and being swept away to a place where I probably will never go. You know, right now I'm reading The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese, who wrote Cutting for Stone. And it's a 775-page book, so I'm kind of slogging through it. But he's taken me to India in 1900.
Oh.
And, you know, and he's taken me to Edinburgh, Scotland in 1900. And I'm really caught up in this family saga. And that's really where I want to be right now. I want to be someplace other than contemporary world true crime. The other books that I read, I also read, I read a lot, some cozies. I like MC Beaton. And I know she passed away in 2019, and I read her, successor, R.W. Green, who's fun. You know, it's just really light, fun stuff that I enjoy reading. Louise Penny, I mean, she's got great characters. I'm hooked on Gamache. I'll read anything that she's written. So, I mean, there's certain, and Anne Cleve, of course. I mean, it's the characters, it's the stories, it's also, you know, I'd like to read outside my genre. You know, give me a good historical novel that, like I said, takes me someplace which I know I never go.
Yeah. No, I know. It's kind of a good thing. Well, perfect. So now social media and website, all of that sort of stuff. How do people find Jody?
Well, I have a brand new website, I'm happy to say. So they can find me at www.jode, Jode, Millman, Millman.com. I'm on Facebook under my name, Jody Millman, Instagram, Jody Writes. And generally, if they just, I mean, there aren't too many Jody Millmans. If they, you know, Google me, I'll come up, you know.
Yeah. You on TikTok yet?
No. I don't want the Chinese knowing anything about me.
Oh. They already caught everything on you on their balloon. Come on.
Yeah, right, exactly. They're right over my house.
They're right over your house. So what do you know? It's too late now. You get on TikTok and start dancing. And...
I can get dancing, right. People don't want to see me dance. I'll be like Elaine in that Jerry Seinfeld episode. I like going every which way.
Well, there you go. Well, of course, now we're going to have that up on the website, and everyone can find you with one click real easily, and it's all good. And did you how was writing over the pandemic for you? How did it work for you, or how did you react to that?
Well, it was kind of interesting because we had our son, daughter-in-law, and their 9-month-old son move in with us.
Oh.
So we had, like 6 people under our roof. And also everybody took turns watching the baby because everybody was working. So my family was very respectful in the afternoon when my door was shut to let me do my writing. So the mornings, I'm there for them. The afternoons, don't come near me, with a 10-foot pole kind of thing. So for me, that living situation was very supportive because I could kind of bounce ideas off of them, during that whole process. So, I mean, I was very, very fortunate during the pandemic in terms of family. Knock on wood, everybody stayed healthy and we were together and I got to write. So it was great.
You're probably in your room drinking. Come on.
Yeah, going. Where's the licorice when you need it?
Yeah, that's right. Well, do you think, when someone like yourself, you're writing a mystery and there's, murders and different things going on. Do you think something like living through the pandemic and all of the human actions and reactions throughout something like that, do you think it seeps into your writing and maybe makes it a little darker? How do you feel on that?
Yeah, a little darker and a little more cynical about relying on systems to do things. You start to question, I think, the structure of life that you relied upon, when you can't even go to the market, and then so why Why is the legal system so screwed up? Why is the criminal justice system all screwed up? I think it starts to allow you to raise questions about systems that you thought were rock solid and really aren't, that it's all a bit of a facade. And I think that goes into making a better mystery, questioning the very roots of, do you know the people that you think you know? Do you know the people you love? So it really does make you question all these things. Makes you a little bit more cynical.
Do you have any advice for new writers who want to get into the business?
Persistence and perseverance. You can't give up. You just have to stay in it. You just have to jump in the pond and do it. Just don't give up. Don't be dissuaded. And also, a practical thing is to attend conferences or take classes so that you know whatever genre you're writing. You know what the rules are. You know how the story arcs are supposed to go. And if you're writing a romance, to have a happily ever after kind of thing. So that you really can, so that you know when you're writing where you're going to be on that bookshelf. Because that's important. It's important to get an agent, it's important to get a publisher, and it's important for a bookstore to know where you're going to be on that shelf.
Yeah, and it's important to have a writer's name that's really close to someone like Michael Connolly or something. So you're beside him on the shelf.
That's right.
And so they can't help but see your book.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Go to a lot of bookstores and if you get published. Do you have Jode Millman's book?
Yeah, that's right.
Get it.
Yeah, I mean, I personally go around to all the malls and put my books in all the bathrooms and all the bars. And
for a good time, Paul Allen.
Yeah, well, that's not just in the book, but the book's there in case they don't want a good time. But they go, oh, what's this? Everyone likes reading in the bathroom. Anyway.
Somebody told me to do that when you go on vacation. Take a book. Like if you rent a house, you do a Verbo or whatever. Take your books with you and leave them in the house when you leave.
Well, you remember, because when we bring up Anne Cleves again, she said, that book for, what was it, for the, one of the series, her book was found in a thrift shop.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was not sold or marketed to a company to make into a series.
Huh.
Shetland, yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Someone found it in a book. Someone who was a producer found it in a thrift shop and bought it and read it, and then they eventually got a hold of her, and it turned out to be a series. So you just don't know.
Yeah.
Who, where, and when are going to find it. You just got to get it out there, So bathrooms are fine.
Yeah, bathrooms are fine. Everybody goes there.
Yeah, they've got to see it. They'll see your cover anyway.
That's true, yeah. They may not want to touch it, but they'll see the cover.
Yeah, they'll see the cover. Yeah, public bathroom. Ooh, after COVID. Anyway, well, I appreciate you being here. It's been a lot of fun, and what can I say? So now the book is called The Empty Kayak, and it's a Queen City crimes mystery. The author is Jode Millman. Thank you for being here.
Alan, thank you, and Dave, it's so nice to talk to you guys.
You too, Jode.
Thanks so much.
You've been listening to the House of Mystery radio show. To find out more about our guests, hosts, or shows, go to www.houseofmystery.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Yeah. Good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.